It all came out during this anonymous interview in a North Side park.
A lot of our rights have been grabbed from us and given to the black man, the nigger, and our full intention is to reclaim that.
At the time, this young hooded man calling himself Klansman 600 threatened to drive homosexuals from Springfield.
We will stop at no ends whatsoever to run them from this city. And after this city, any other city we find them in, we plan to run them completely out.
Violently?
If necessary. If we have to hang them from every tree, we will.
This was the scene in Hermitage, Missouri on April 21st of this year. A small band of men and women in hoods and robes reminded folks in the Ozarks that the Ku Klux Klan is still alive. A few weeks later, this poster began showing up on the streets of Springfield. Then someone tried to burn this cross in Phelps Grove Park and left this message for the local gay and lesbian community. In June, Klansmen marched through the streets of Lebanon, and a few days later another cross was burned, this one at Central High School, with another warning, this one for blacks. And when Springfield City Council drafted a resolution condemning such acts of intimidation, a Klansman stood and spoke in opposition. As recently as last Saturday in Mountain Grove, the Klan was on the march.
Good evening, I'm Dennis Graves. During the next hour, we'll be talking about hate. We'll try to understand why some people hate other people. We'll introduce you to the leaders of some organizations often referred to as hate groups. We'll explain what motivates these men and women and try to understand why they're preoccupied with this race thing. It's not our intent tonight to condemn anyone for their beliefs. In America, people even have the right to hate. They also have the right to express it nonviolently. Now, for some of you, their words alone may hurt. Others may find material objectionable, especially members of the black community, for whom the Ku Klux Klan is an unwelcome but nevertheless permanent part of their heritage. It's not our intent tonight to glamorize racists. We wish only to understand them. We'll leave it to you to judge them.
Working harder than ever. D-Nice is rocking the sound set tonight. We're not through. I want to drop a new style. It's calm yet wild, the style that I speak. Just deal with facts and you'll never get weak in the heart. In fact, you'll start to illuminate knowledge to others. In a song, let me demonstrate the force of knowledge. Knowledge reigns supreme. The ignorant is ripped to smithereens. What do you mean when you say I'm rebellious? Cause I don't accept everything that you're telling us? What are you selling us? The creator dwelling us. I sit in your unknown class while you're failing us. I failed your class cause I ain't with your reasoning. You're trying to make me you by seasoning up my mind with C.J. Run. See John walking a hardcore New York? Come on now, it's like a chocolate cow. It doesn't exist, no way, no how. It seems to me that in the school this ebony, African history should be pumped up steadily, but it's not. And this has got to stop. See spot, run, get spot. Insulting to a black mentality, a black way of life or a jet black family. So I include with one concern that you must learn. Yo, Chris. Hold up, D. Hold up, D. We're gonna see if they're really ready for this. Are y'all having fun tonight? I said, are y'all having fun tonight? I believe that if you're teaching history, deal with straight up facts, no mystery. Teach the student what needs to be taught. Cause black and white kids both take shorts. When one doesn't know about the other one's culture, ignorance swoops down like a vulture. Cause you don't know that you ain't just a janitor. No one told you about Benjamin Banneker, a brilliant black man that invented the almanac. Can't you see what KRS is coming at? Well, Eli Whitney, Haile Selassie, Granville Woods made the walkie-talkie. Louis Latimer improved on Edison. Charles Drew did a lot for medicine. Garrett Morgan made the traffic lights. Harriet Tubman featured slaves at night. Madam C.J. Walker made the straightening comb. But you won't know this if you weren't shown. The point I'm getting at, it might be hard. original name of Africa, now stripped of its fame. It's good to note that in ancient times, Egyptians developed all sciences of the mind to the point where they ruled the planet. But Rome, Greece, and Persia wasn't having it. They attacked and won the war, but it wasn't enough. They had to get to the core, cause in that time it was Akibu line that ruled religion, politics, and man. In order to destroy the Egyptian race, they had to wipe the sciences from off the face of the planet. So they proceeded to ban it and replace it with Christianity. And it's been that way all the way to today. Learn what we teach, hear what we say. But here comes the K, the R, the S, the O, the N, the E, the BDP, and we rhyme intelligently. Let me continue with Theodosius, a Greek ruler not known to most of us. He, in the 4th century AD, closed the Egyptian schools, you see. 2 years later, Justinian rules. 6 AD was it for schools. As a result, ignorance had swirled over Christian Europe and Greco-Roman worlds. This went on for 1,000 years of ignorance, stupidity, and tears. Now comes the 17th century hardness. Europe began to come out of its darkness. So Johann F. Blumenbach, a German, came out of nowhere and started confirming white supremacy and men of colors. Before this time, all men were brothers. It was Johann who went on to say there are 5 different colors in the world today. That's Caucasian, Malayan, and Mongolian, American, Indian, and Ethiopian. Yet the ignorance gets scarier. He believed whites were superior. According to his idiotic fountain, the purest whites were from the Caucasus Mountains. J.A. Gouverneur and H.S. Chamberlain both supported this outrageous racism. This went on to what the master race should be and why they killed the Jews in Germany. Here is the reason why I'm so concerned, because you must learn. We're not done. We're not done. We're not done. Check this out.
The Ku Klux Klan was formed in 1866 in Tennessee. The name was derived from a Greek word meaning circle of friends. The founders saw themselves as Southern patriots. Others saw them as stubborn white people who refused to surrender their privileges. From the beginning, the Klan specialized in random violence, systematic torture, and murder. No one dared challenge the Klan. This barbaric image began changing at the turn of the century with the help of early movie makers who saw Klansmen as white knights. In the 1915 classic Birth of a Nation, American audiences watched as masked horsemen rescued the white maiden from a black rapist. White people stampeded to join this new glamorous Klan. By 1924, as many as 5 million Americans were card-carrying Klansmen. That's the year 40,000 men and women in white robes marched openly in Washington, D.C., while at night, fellow Klansmen were still secretly terrorizing black communities all across the country. Klan members were responsible for more than 1,000 acts of racial violence between 1933 and 1964. During the 60s, blacks made it clear that they'd had enough. Ultimately, the civil rights movement prevailed. The Klan lost. It rebounded somewhat in the late 70s. Then during the 80s, internal power struggles left this so-called invisible empire weakened. Today, leaders are looking for ways to breathe new life back into the Klan.
There is no such thing as the Klan. There are literally dozens of Klan factions.
Today, there are professional Klan watchers like Leonard Zeskind. He keeps up with Klan activity for an organization known as the Center for Democratic Renewal. He works out of this office in a secret location in Kansas City. Zeskind is one of the country's leading experts on right-wing hate groups, especially Klan groups.
The group in southwest Missouri that's active right now is the Christian Knights. You also have the White Knights. You have the American Knights. You have the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the Invisible Empire Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, the Invisible Empire Ku Klux Klan. You have the White Knights of Texas. You have the White Knights of Florida. There are literally dozens and dozens of Klan factions. They're one part of the white supremacist movement, but they are not a unified national structure.
Nationwide, experts say Klan activity like this is on the decrease.
What you have is you have pockets of increases in Klan activity. White supremacist activity occurs in every area of the country. It's not unique to the Ozarks. It's not only happening in southwest Missouri or northwest Arkansas. You have a pocket of increase here because you have a new organizer in town.
Hey, man, I am here because I love my white race. I'm here to preserve my white heritage.
Meet Jimmy Russell, Grand Dragon of the Christian Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Russell grew up in Mississippi during the 60s.
I grew up at a time there was no integration in schools when I was there. It came about the year that I graduated. The federal government came up with the idea, let's put the blacks in the white schools to get quality education. That wasn't a good idea to me. It never has been. The blacks had their own schools. The blacks had their own teachers. They had everything we had. I mean, I don't care what they say, they had it. So instead of raising the level of education from the blacks up to that of white, they brought the education of the white down.
Russell says he got along fine with blacks before the civil rights movement came to Mississippi.
Blacks always had jobs. Even when I was growing up, blacks worked.
Good jobs?
Well, I was raised in the country. They had the same jobs I had. I was picking and chopping cotton. That's what I grew up with. There was times in the country when we truly got along together. Fish, swim, hunt together.
We all over there?
Russell left the cotton fields and learned a trade. He became an auto mechanic and a Klansman. He recently left Mississippi and settled in Camdenton, Missouri. He brought with him his family, his Confederate flag, and his racist cause.
A lot of the southern states are lost to our cause. A lot of the southern states have become so integrated and so race mixed, and the white people there have become so brainwashed, and they've embraced the interracial atmosphere so much that it's almost a certain thing to mark them off. That is one of the reasons, too, I left Mississippi, because to me the whites down there say, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Let's hide our head in the sand. It'll go away.
Wake up, white people!
Russell and his Christian Knights made their Missouri debut in April in Hermitage. On hand was the group's Imperial Wizard from North Carolina, Virgil Griffin.
You go right over here to St. Louis, Missouri, you go to any big city, you turn on your YouTube that you got at home, they'll tell you how violent the Ku Klux Klan is, but you go over to these cities and find out who's robbing the little pantries, who's killing the clerks, who's doing the rape, who's doing the robbing, who's doing the murder. It is niggers that belong to the NAACP.
The group moved on to Lebanon, Missouri, where Russell tried to speak to a hostile crowd. It was a white crowd.
To me, anybody turns against the white race, their own race, that is the biggest treason anybody can ever commit.
Russell and his followers had planned to march here in Marshfield that same afternoon. Dozens of townspeople and out-of-town hecklers waited. The Klan never showed. Russell says there had been threats that he canceled because it was just too risky.
We're trying to promote a peaceful image. We're not going to get out and do like Martin Luther King, preach nonviolence and get out there and create a lot of violence. And that is one reason that we decided not to go there at the time. But Marshfield, we don't have to have a permit to march there, so we just go anytime and get in touch. So we will be in Marshfield.
Just last Saturday, Russell brought his show here to Mountain Grove. A sparse crowd listened to what Russell calls his message of love.
A lot of sponsors are dropping the PGA tournament because a country club wouldn't allow niggers in there. Won't they go and start their own country club somewhere? I have no objection to that. I'm just sick and tired of everybody just laying down and giving everything that we have, everything our forefathers fought for, over to them jungle bunnies and any other minority that wants to come over here and ask for it.
I want to shake your hand. I believe in what you stand up for. Somebody's got to.
You just can't find them.
That's right. Well, I'm from the South, and I'll stand up for them.
Yeah, down with niggers.
That's what it's all about.
Russell hopes to round up enough followers in these small towns around the Ozarks to one day stage a mighty march through the streets of Springfield.
The thought of us marching into a city, Springfield or any other city, with 2,500 Klansmen, you know, that, I don't dream like Martin Luther King. I mean, that's not a dream of mine. I know that's fantasy. We're looking more for 150, 200 dedicated Klansmen.
I think that the Christian Knights of the Ku Klux Klan is a representation of a throwback to the old type of Klan of the 60s and early 70s. It's The cross-burning, march in the streets. If they could do it, they would terrorize people, kind of Ku Klux Klan.
Alongside Russell in Lebanon was an angry young man with a bullhorn. He calls himself Steve Saxon.
I was glad that they were yelling. I want to invite him to the next public appearance. I want him to come. I want him to yell. I want him to scream.
This is Steve Saxon without the mask. He doesn't use his real last name. He says he's trying to protect his family. He tells of a violent life in Springfield, molested at an early age by perverts in a park, his mother murdered by drug dealers, his wife and child beaten by a group of blacks.
I had a lot of problems with that, and I always have had a lot of problems with that. I have never been able to forgive or forget what has happened in the past.
Saxon joined the Christian Knights in April, shortly after they marched in Hermitage.
For many years, I wanted to prosecute the people who had done me wrong and my family wrong. And for the very first time in my life, I was able to let the public know, let the government know that there was some wrongdoing out there. And yes, I became very emotional. It all came out at once. You know, it's been wanting to come out for a long time.
It all came out during this anonymous interview in a North Side park.
A lot of our rights have been grabbed from us and given to the black man, the nigger, and our full intention is to reclaim that.
At the time, this young hooded man calling himself Klansman 600 threatened to drive homosexuals from Springfield.
We will stop at no ends whatsoever to run them from this city. And after this city, any other city we find them in, we plan to run them completely out.
Violently?
If necessary. If we have to hang them from every tree, we will. I was less educated at that time. I feel that at that time, I thought there was only one way to deal with the problem. I have since been exposed to many alternatives to being like that.
So initially, you were emotional and potentially violent.
Initially. I have decided to stay on one side of the fence, the legal side. No lynchings, no shootings, no burnings, you know.
As far as I go...
Saxon first revealed his identity at this public hearing before Springfield City Council. He was opposing a resolution that denounced violence by hate groups. Just his presence triggered a confrontation.
Chief, clear the chambers, please.
The very next day, Saxon and his bullhorn were here on the steps of the Arkansas State Capitol in Little Rock. Black activists say McIntosh was threatening to burn an American flag. Saxon called him a traitor.
I intended to defend the American flag, and that I did. It had nothing to do with his being black or my being white. And if he was white, I would have still went. Had to do with someone burning a flag that has represented this country for so many years.
You're a traitor! 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 You're a traitor!
It's a sad day when Americans allow non-patriot people such as Mr. McIntosh to burn the American flag on the steps of this Capitol here in Little Rock.
McIntosh ended up burning only a Ku Klux Klan robe. For Saxon, with all this notoriety comes some danger. Without his mask, he's subject to taking what the Klan is famous for dishing out.
You fear for your life?
Yeah. Some substantial people have made some substantial threats. But I knew it was a tough job when I took it on. I didn't know how tough. I'm learning. It's a pretty tough job. But when a soldier goes into combat, he knows that he could take the next bullet that comes out of the next enemy's rifle that is fired. And he knows he could be the next to die.
That's wartime.
This is war. This is war. It's a war for freedom. It's a war for preservation.
God bless America and all the white people in it!
Since this march in Lebanon, Saxon has left the Christian Knights. He's joined another Klan group, the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Its national headquarters are north of Harrison in Zinc, Arkansas. Its leader, Tom Robb. Rob has been involved in the white supremacy movement since 1964. He's an identity Christian minister. He believes that Anglo-Saxons are descended from the 10 lost tribes of Israel, that Caucasians are God's chosen people, that Jews are imposters. Rob has always been willing to stand toe-to-toe with his adversaries. During a 1985 identity rally in Harrison, Rob marched alone into this crowd of angry protesters.
We don't like the nightmare that America's turned into.
Jewish Americans?
Wait a minute, let me ask you a question. You're a Jew, I won't talk to you. Yeah, wait a minute. I'm a Jew, you're damn right. Let me just back off, Mr. Rob, back off. Let me just tell you something.
So thick, it's bigger than your body. Why don't you give up, man?
Last year, Rob became Grand Wizard of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. He's always been close to this man, Richard Butler, founder and leader of the powerful Aryan Nations in Idaho. Rob marched alongside Butler during last month's National Klan rally in Houston.
I think Rob fancies himself as a next Richard Butler and would like to think of himself as a national leader. Rob's Klan group is probably strongest, actually, in the Midwest area, but they really were broken apart by a series of factional fights in 1980, and Rob is the inheritor. He's the king of a pretty small dung heap, as far as I can see.
Unfortunately, nobody on the outside really knows how large Rob's or any other group is. Klan leaders don't share their membership lists with each other, much less with people like Leonard Susskind. Nationwide, he believes there are no more than 6,500 Klansmen, down from about 12,000 in 1980. Laird Wilcox believes the Klan has dropped to only 3,000 members nationwide.
We have 250 million people in the United States, and 3,000 members of the Ku Klux Klan. That's one Klansman for every 85,000 Americans. This isn't a dangerous situation. It's not a threat to our democracy, and we're not being taken over by the Ku Klux Klan.
They're outnumbered.
Outnumbered many, many times. And where do they have support? It's certainly not in the media. No one in the power structure supports them. And in a funny kind of a way, what support they have comes from the fact that they're perceived as such incredible underdogs.
Wilcox has spent the last 25 years collecting information about groups like the Klan. He has amassed what may be the world's largest collection of extremist literature, the Wilcox Collection. It's housed here on the campus of the University of Kansas. Wilcox has found that each leader of each Klan group is like a salesman pushing his own special philosophy. It means that different Klan groups attract different kinds of people.
I think that the Christian Knights tends to recruit blue-collar folks in the 17 to 30-year-old age bracket. Generally people who, if they work steadily, it's a low-wage scale type situation. They don't recruit at the high end of the middle-class spectrum the way the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan did under David Duke.
Like you have upper racists and lower racists?
Absolutely. It's a class society just like it is normally. You know, you have organizations in the white supremacist movement that appeal to the lawyers, the doctors, the professionals, the college professors. They produce a different kind of literature. They speak a different kind of urbane, witty racism than the kind of gutter racism that comes out of a group like the Christian Knights.
Whether they're blue-collar or white-collar, rich or poor, young or old, Ku Klux Klan recruits seem to share many personality traits.
It's the sort of person who tends to see things in terms of good and bad, black and white, right or wrong, a person who wants to be very certain about things that you really perhaps can't be too certain about, the person who, for reasons of his own, has a need to attach himself to a cause that he perceives as being bigger and better than himself.
Wilcox says the Klan's a great place for folks who enjoy being yelled at.
I am so important and I am so right that people hate me and want to kill me. And this is a very congenial idea for people like Klansmen.
Susskind has identified another group that's particularly vulnerable to the Klan's message, young people who don't remember the suffering that racism can cause.
And you have a generation of young white kids who come up who have never seen Jim Crow, who don't understand civil rights legislation, who don't understand what the Voting Rights Act meant in 1964, and for whom those realities are as distant as World War II was for the generation that grew up in the 1960s. And they don't understand any of these things. And so for them, racism is just a natural response.
You know what it all means?
Yes.
What does it mean?
Peace. Try and get the black people to stay in their area and the whites stay in theirs.
You think that's good?
Yeah.
Boy, been brought up right.
For much of its 124-year history, the Ku Klux Klan has welcomed its reputation as a violent hate group, but only when it served the Klan's purpose. When Klansmen were busy keeping black people out of restaurants and schools and voting booths, their hateful reputation was an asset. Today, the Klan is desperate for new members. It's fighting for its life, and its leaders are finding that hate's not a big seller unless it's in a pretty white package labeled love.
The Ku Klux Klan is not necessarily a hate group.
The hate groups are those who hate people.
We're not a hate group.
I hate to be associated with the word hate all the time.
As far as that four-letter word,
I take offense to it if you're talking about me. What do you call NAACP? Are they not a hate group?
hate, well, I tell you, that's a touchy word right there.
I'm not a hateful person. I ain't got a hateful bone in my body.
We're not a hate group. We're not out here.
Klansmen keep insisting on one hand that they are not haters, yet they'll freely admit on the other hand that they hate black people.
Do I hate them? I hate them to death. And if they violate my airspace, I'll even hate them more. Yes, I do.
They say they also hate Jews.
I hate communist Jews. I hate Jews that promote race mixing. I hate Jews that promote homosexuality. I hate Jews that promote the destruction of America's republic. And I hate Jews that promote anything that would be destructive of our heritage and well-being.
But you're not a hate group.
They quote this. I think any American that would hate these things. The Bible says that we're supposed to hate the evil and love the good.
Klan watchers say all this is just so much public relations rhetoric that this new improved Klan of the 90s has simply learned how to deny the negative and accentuate the positive.
You know, people say there's something wrong with being a racist. I don't see anything wrong with loving my race.
We're not a hate group, we're a pro group, we're pro-white.
The modern Klan is applying this same technique to challenge its public image as a violent group of racist vigilantes.
We're not a violent group, contrary to what some people think about us.
We're not going to go out here and lynch any Negroes whatsoever. That's not going to happen. You know, we're not out here to grab all the Jews and throw them in gas chambers. That's not going to happen.
The old Ku Klux Klan openly defended the genetic superiority of the white race, white supremacy. The new Klan talks not about supremacy, but pride.
There's nothing wrong with being white. If blacks can have black power, if they can have black pride, if they can have Black History Month, if the Hispanics can have groups like La Raza Unida, the black groups can have NAACP, if the Jewish groups can have B'nai B'rith, why can't the white people say, hey, I'm proud of being white?
Rob and other modern Klansmen say the organization has changed its ways. They say they now stand for preservation of white rights.
They stand for what they've always stood for. They started in the latter part of the last century as a terrorist organization to intimidate black people, to keep them from voting. They grew and expanded from there and tried to become more sophisticated. But they are still basically a racist organization. They're a terrorist organization. That's how they started. They stand for racism and separatism.
The Klan has a history of violence. There's nothing but violence with the Klan.
But they say that's the old Klan. They've changed.
But why use the name?
They want equality now.
Why use the name? Start off with a new name. That name has a connotation of violence that enrages other minorities. And they're now after, I understand, the new Klan are after child abusers and drug dealers and homosexuals. And they're just after all the things that they feel that they can get someone who's mad against. They come across whatever is the hot topic of the day, and they're against that and get you all aroused and then just slide in everything else.
They're attaching themselves to the causes they see as popular to ride in on the coattails of those issues and then give their own propaganda, use it effectively to try to recruit people.
Klansmen want to sign up folks who don't like blacks, Jews, drug dealers, homosexuals, prostitutes, flag burners, and abortionists.
What they have is a strategy to recruit people who are already willing to become Klansmen.
And the only good flag in the world is the cross.
They don't have a strategy of taking your normal average day Joe and making him into a racist. They always have a potential for violence. They will destroy race relations in a community. But I think they're not the same kind of problem as the sophisticated racism of a David Duke.
I think if human rights of minorities are important and valuable, then I think the human rights of white people is also just as important and just as valuable.
This is David Duke. Here in Louisiana, he's a lot bigger than the Ku Klux Klan, and he keeps getting bigger. His enemies say he's potentially the most dangerous racist in the world today.
They call me names. They call me, I'm a bigot, I'm a Nazi, I'm a Klansman, I'm a whatever.
Racist.
Yeah, racist. And they're really guilty of what they accuse me of. I think there's a lot of intolerant people out there in the world who don't look at a man's ideas, but there's a McCarthyism in reverse going on right now in the society by the left.
Are you willing to defend your homes and your families?
During the late 70s, David Duke was the Grand Wizard of the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. The young charismatic Klansman drew huge crowds wherever he went, even here in Rogers, Arkansas.
We as white people are going to stand up and defend our culture, our heritage, and our right to exist on this continent.
I was a rascal. I was very strident, in my younger days, and I was looking for alternative issues. The Klan, I looked into the Nazis, I looked into the Minutemen, the John Birch Society, all these groups. I think if there had been a National Vegetarian Party, I might have joined that.
In 1980, Duke quit the Klan and formed the National Association for the Advancement of White People. From this bookstore in New Orleans, he continued to export his racist doctrine while quietly gathering political support. Finally, in 1989, the former Klansman rocked the political establishment in Louisiana when he was elected to the State House of Representatives. Black Representative Kip Holden walked out of the chambers in the middle of the swearing-in ceremony.
I walked out at the moment he was being sworn in because I knew when he was taking the oath that he did not and will not abide by the Constitution and laws of this state and the United States.
Duke's been trying ever since to convince folks that he's changed his ways, that he's no longer a radical right-wing Nazi white supremacist Klansman.
All of us make mistakes in our lives, and maybe my mistakes were a little more vocal, a little more public. I mean, I never committed any high crimes. I'm accused of thought crimes. I think we're all allowed in this country to, change our opinions about things and to grow as a person.
He's grown up, but his philosophies haven't grown up. His basic beliefs haven't changed.
Michael Zadaran is the author of this biography of David Duke.
David Duke, who wore a swastika and wore a Nazi uniform in 1970, is the same David Duke today. His methods of communications have certainly changed, but his philosophies and his principles haven't changed at all. Not at all.
Duke insists, however, that he believes in equal rights for everyone. He says he represents every person in his district.
Is there not a hidden racist agenda there?
Absolutely not. I mean, my legislation is very clear. I've been here 2 years. You look at my bills, my legislation. I had a bill to have a higher penalty for selling drugs in a public housing facility than in society at large. And that was called a discriminatory bill. Well, it only discriminated against drug pushers. I mean, would you be opposed would anybody out there watching this program be opposed to a bill that would, have a tougher penalty for drug pushers who sell dope in their neighborhoods?
Saying that let's get tough on crime is fine. Saying let's go into the housing projects and grab those blacks and get those blacks and let's put those blacks behind jail. That's another way of saying it. And when you get behind the closed doors, you say it's those niggers. You know it and I know it, and let's get them. And that's the message that's coming through. And people know that's how the man believes.
One of my bills prohibited racial discrimination. In fact, the wording of it was that no affirmative action program that discriminates for or against an individual on the basis of race shall be allowed. I think if it's wrong to discriminate against a minority member, then I think it's just as wrong to discriminate against a white person.
If you ignore the history of this country and the history of this state, then his argument would be valid. But based on the fact that we have been pretty much oppressed people in this country, based on the fact that we've had to be legislated in the Constitution and then come back and we're looking at this year another Civil Rights Act, based on all of those things, we know that America has not arrived. America does not treat all of its citizens equally.
I don't believe in racial guilt or racial supremacy. I believe in equal rights. I don't think you solve problems of discrimination with more discrimination.
David Duke is now running for the U.S. Senate. Political observers here in Louisiana agree that in the hands of David Duke, this affirmative action issue is a powerful weapon, a weapon that could land a former Klansman in the U.S. Senate.
We want equal rights for all Americans, ladies and gentlemen.
David Duke looks like a movie star. He's smooth, he's polite, he's articulate. He doesn't say he hates now, he loves. He's here to protect white Western Christian civilization. He's the good guy. He's the white knight now. He's very dangerous. Where I don't know of anyone in the world today that's got the potential that David Duke does.
I'm worried because I see people that you would think would know better about this guy now embracing him, flocking to him.
It's going to be standing out there in the United States Senate.
I want a voice in my government.
Betty Pickens is a volunteer here in the Duke campaign headquarters.
We've been intimidated so long that he's got the guts to get up and say, well, we're ashamed to say we don't have the guts to get up and say. And that's really basically, it's a voice. It's a voice.
He supports the white people in his city.
When it comes to David Duke, few people are undecided. The former Grand Wizard brings out emotions in people, whether they're Dukies or Duke Busters.
I don't think we can be sure that he's not just performing more wizardry right now.
They make him now like a commodity that somebody really wants to go out and buy. Although he's dressed in a suit now, well-tailored, fairly good-looking guy by some standards, you find out it's nothing more but the same old person now, just without the hood over his head and the sheet around him. David Duke is still the same David Duke. He's a Klansman and a Nazi mixed up into one.
It's just really, racism is an epithet hurled at people. It's like a stink bomb. It suspends rational discussion. And I'm not going to be silenced by an epithet, and I reject the epithet. I'm proud of my heritage, just like Jesse Jackson's proud of his. But I believe in equal rights for all Americans, and I want to see everybody participate fully in this country.
David Duke sees himself as the white Jesse Jackson. Win or lose this Senate election, David Duke's going to be an international phenomenon. This will be the most closely watched Senate race in the history of America.
As a result of this, you see other states now, like our neighboring state of Texas and Arkansas, where they had a white supremacist running. You're seeing all of these people saying, well, if David did it, I guess I can do it.
David Duke. They say I'm a David Duke candidate because he's a friend of mine. Well,
Ralph Forbes this year used the same magic words in Arkansas that got Duke elected in Louisiana.
I think affirmative action is discrimination against white people. I don't hate anybody because of their race. I'm against abortion. It's murder. I'm not tough on black people. I'm tough on criminals.
The difference between Forbes and Duke is that the difference between a show dog and a mongrel that, isn't very well combed. Forbes is just a cruder version of the same thing.
Forbes got 46% of the vote in the primary, but lost in the runoff. He came away with only 17%.
Well, I'm not happy that he received 17. I mean, I think it's a good thing that Forbes didn't win. And I think people were embarrassed that he had gotten as many votes as he did the first time around. But when you think about it, 17% of the population then voted for him knowing who he was. And that translates into tens of thousands of folks.
David Duke appears to be running well against incumbent Democrat Senator Bennett Johnston. Pollsters say Duke and Johnston are running neck and neck, but those same experts suspect Duke may be running much stronger than the polls indicate. After all, even today, even in Louisiana, a lot of folks are unwilling to admit that they're going to vote for the Grand Wizard. The David Duke phenomenon and the return of the Ku Klux Klan are the most visible signs that the right-wing movement is alive and well. There are other individuals and organizations who continue to work quietly out of public view. When we come back, we'll check in on some of those groups, and we'll follow the long journey of a man who was seduced by one of the most violent of the hate brokers. There are a lot of frustrated, frightened, and angry people in the world. Millions have been affected in one way or another by unemployment, crime, or poverty. And for all of those folks who are looking for somebody to blame for their troubles, there are plenty of hate brokers out there pointing fingers.
We love our white race.
When Jimmy Russell's not marching around the Ozarks in his Klan suit, he's fixing cars for his neighbors around Lake of the Ozarks.
Trying to get the people to unite.
Cross-lighting to the Ku Klux Klan is our way of being a beacon on the hill.
When Steve Saxon's not giving City Council a lesson in Klan etiquette, he's driving a cab around the streets of Springfield. When Tom Robb's not busy with Grand Wizard stuff, he's running errands around the Ozarks in his pickup like everybody else. The world of organized white supremacy isn't somewhere else. It's here. We just don't always see it.
I think that the most useful visualization would be of a series of circles, with the largest circle being this thing we'll call racism. And inside of that racism, there's a smaller circle called organized white supremacy. And inside of that organized white supremacy, you would see three other circles. There would be Klan groups. There'd be neo-Nazis. And then there'd be this third thing called Christian patriots. There would be space around those three intersecting circles for your unaffiliated but nevertheless active white supremacists. And then they would exist in this larger sea of prejudice and bigotry.
Zeskind says the wall between simple racism and hardcore white supremacy is very thin.
We liken the wall between the two, rather than as a brick wall or an iron wall, what you have is a semi-permeable membrane. And the ideas from one go back and forth, so that the sort of the generic racism that exists in society feeds into the campaign of a David Duke. And on the other hand, David Duke gives it a concentrated expression and heightens it on the other side of that membrane.
It's a seduction. It's subtle. You know, it's like the serpent in the garden.
This is Kerry Noble. He was drawn through that imaginary membrane into racism, then into militant white supremacy. He was a member and a leader of CSA, the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord. Over an 8-year period, Noble saw CSA go from a peaceful Christian community to a right-wing terrorist group.
Most people in society obviously know that the right-wing movement is wrong, or that hatred of the races is wrong. But what people don't understand is how you can get involved with that to begin with.
Noble is sharing his experience in a book entitled Seduction into Right-Wing Extremism.
And seduction is not a instantaneous thing. It's a progressive thing over a period of time. So the longer the period of time for the seduction, the worse it's got you.
For Noble, it started in 1977 when he followed Jim Ellison to Arkansas.
God told us to come here. He said he gave us this land as a possession.
Ellison told his followers that he was chosen to be the protector of God's children during the Great Tribulation or the end time.
Well, if we're going to clothe them, we're going to feed them, we're going to house them, and you got all these bad guys out here, we're going to have to protect these people also, it would seem like, because these bad people got guns. So that's why we started getting guns initially. And then it got to a point where it's not just going to be a few people that we're going to protect them from, it could be mobs of people. So with mobs, you need machine guns and you need hand grenades.
In 1979, Ellison discovered a theological revelation called identity.
The basic message was that the Anglo-Saxon race were the descendants of the lost tribes of Israel, and that those who were saying that they were God's chosen people, which would be the Jews, were actually the seed of Satan. They were lying about who they were, and everybody else was in deception about that.
Identity also proclaimed that blacks were not descended from Adam and Eve. Jim Ellison, Kerry Noble, and all the rest had quietly become white supremacists.
By that point, we had become associated with
some of the writings of Aryan nations and the Thunderbolt out of Georgia, some of the more radical writings. And over a period of time, it just kind of more and more sunk in. And it was like, this is all we heard. Because, we'd gotten rid of our TVs, we'd gotten rid of newspapers and magazines and that kind of stuff by then, to where all the information we had coming into us was
hate-oriented.
Just hate-oriented. That's all it was. And so after a period of time, it was just, okay. And you're kind of numbed to thinking otherwise at that point.
Noble says he was numb when CSA member Richard Snell robbed a pawn shop, shot the owner, and later killed an Arkansas state trooper. He says he was numb when CSA members tried to kill a federal judge and an FBI agent, and when they firebombed this gay church in Springfield.
I never took part in anything that CSA was guilty of directly. I knew stuff was going on. That was my involvement. And most of the stuff I knew after the fact. I had gotten to the point to where if things hadn't changed by the end of the summer in '85, I was going to be gone. But that got...
the feds got there first.
They beat me to the punch on that one.
Federal agents laid siege to the camp and ordered Ellison to surrender. He refused.
Looking back, it still seems to me like it was all a game. It was just a head trip. We thought that we were these mighty men of God and big warriors and that kind of stuff, that God was going to intervene. Of course, James was convinced that if the feds fired a shot, God was going to open up the earth and swallow the federal agents and that sort of thing. There was others of us that said, well, that would be nice if it works, but what if it doesn't? We're left here getting shot at. To James, that wasn't a possibility. I really felt like that we were going to die on this thing. On the second day, I said, it's over with. I couldn't see any way out. So it was real serious for me. I didn't think, I knew we couldn't win. If it came down to just natural means versus natural means, us versus them, God didn't do nothing, there was no way we could win.
On the fifth day, James Ellison reached the same conclusion and surrendered, something he vowed he would never do. Noble was arrested 5 weeks later.
So I went to the county jail and they put me in there with James. The first day I'm in there with James had been in there 40 days at this point. The first day I'm in there with James already had a list of who to turn against in the right-wing movement. Well, that just blew me away.
So he came around real quick.
Oh, yeah, he came around real fast.
And you're still struggling.
And I'm still struggling. And I said, this isn't right. How did you get to this point all of a sudden? Well, he wants to sell everybody down the river to the point of making stuff up. And I said, I just can't believe you're doing this. I mean, he literally made stuff up. He got to the point, Dennis, where he come up to me one time and he said, I want you to do something for me. I said, why? He said, tell them that everything was your idea and that I had nothing to do with that, with anything. And you take the rap for everything so I can go back and hold CSA together. And I couldn't even believe he asked me to do that. This was not the man I had chosen to follow. And all I wanted to do was get away from this man. This man scared me. I wanted to be separated from him.
Did you feel violated then?
Yeah, I felt raped. I really did.
Harry Noble spent 26 months in federal prison. He's still trying to get his life back together. We agreed to keep his location secret. He's still holding on to some of the items from the old CSA chapel and tries to remember how it was in the beginning. He says he agreed to this interview only because he wants to warn people about the right-wing movement.
It's a very seducing thing. It's like the scriptures talk about the young man not going to the whore. Even though she looks nice on the outside, you find out once you're involved with her that it's not what you thought it was going to be. And that's what I consider the right-wing movement now. It's when you're getting involved with it, it looks really good. I mean, it's appealing to you to think that you're the part of God's chosen people of the Scriptures. And that even though the Bible says that God didn't choose his people because they were anything special, but because of his election, you forget that at a certain point, and that's part of the seduction.
Harry Noble says he considers himself lucky. After all, he says, James Ellison is still serving time and still being seduced.
He saw himself as the king of the Ozarks,
he was God's chosen vessel. I think he manipulated a group of people who simply wanted to know God's purpose for their lives and caused heartache for them. And I think that if something doesn't happen after his release, he'll do the same thing again. He'll get a people together again.
Throughout this program, we've seen and heard from both ends of the political spectrum. You've seen extremists yelling at extremists, and it's entirely possible that both sides are wrong. A lot of otherwise normal people may not even know they're extremists till the Klan comes to town.
Get out of the 20s and come to the 90s.
That's right. Everybody's equal.
This is typically how folks respond when the Klan comes to town.
KKK.
Men in hoods bring out the worst in people.
Even the Klan has AIDS. Even the Klan has AIDS. Eat the sheep and you smoke dope all the time. Get out.
You're going to suffer a horrible death. You're going to suffer an unbearable death. I'm going to wish it on you like a witch.
This is where you see this very strange image of anti-Klan demonstrators out there screaming and shrieking and turning red in the face and throwing things and calling names and acting very much like we perceive Klan members to act.
Laird Wilcox studies hate groups and the people who hate them.
The fact that a hater hates somebody who is also a hater doesn't mitigate his character at all. This is not a proper response to extremism. This is extremism personified. When you become a hate-crazed maniac in order to oppose people whom you believe are hate-crazed maniacs themselves, and who possibly are, that is not the kind of example to set.
Folks who hate hate groups are quick to engage in name-calling.
Very proud of it, but if they're going to fight like this, we got to fight back. It's freedom of speech.
There's no quicker way to silence a point of view than to assert that the person who is voicing that point of view is a pervert or a subversive or a racist or some other kind of bad name.
Wilcox preaches against what he sees as a growing intolerance in America.
Whether it's the law and order craze, whether it has to do with flag burning, whether it has to do with art, whether it has to do with rock music, religious beliefs, political beliefs, abortion or anti-abortion. It's really a question of who is the most intolerant.
For some folks, tolerating the Ku Klux Klan doesn't come easy.
Let them have their say, debate with them, argue with them, show them where they're wrong.
What I hear you saying is that when the Klan applies in your town for a permit to march, the proper reaction should be to invite them to dinner and say, let's talk.
That would be a tremendous idea.
Not at my house. My mother would say, no.
Guess who's coming to dinner?
No, I wouldn't try that at my house. But I really don't see them even being interested in doing that, sitting down at the table. But if they did say they would,
Could you
but would they listen? Would they listen? Would they be willing to just open and listen?
Would you?
Yes, I've been doing it.
Carolyn Moncrief says she's encouraged that some Klansmen like Steve Saxon are taking off their hoods and discussing the issues openly.
See, it used to be, everything was behind closed doors and at night, covered up. You never would know who the person was.
Under the hood.
Nevertheless, she says it's still the Ku Klux Klan.
I see that. I still see that, just like a little halo around them, just like that. It's only a few of them doing that, a few coming to the front. Everybody else is still covered behind the scenes.
At the request of the NAACP, Springfield City Council has gone on record denouncing hate violence. Moncrief says other measures are being considered in Springfield to deal with acts of intimidation.
Are you trying to shut the Klan up?
Oh, no. No. Everyone has the right to speak. That would be just like telling me to be quiet. No, everybody has that right. No, it's that because of their history of violence, we want them to follow a strict rules for when they come to town and when they have to do something, just as we would do if we were doing something too.
Wilcox believes the place to challenge the Klan and other hate brokers is not in the streets and not at City Hall, but in the classroom.
To effectively oppose racism, you have to understand it. You can't understand it if the only accounts of it that you hear are those presented by its opposition. The most effective enemy David Duke has is the person who knows him well, who listens to him when he speaks, who reads what he has to write, who understands what he has to say and how he feels. This person knows David Duke, and that man is a threat to David Duke. It's not the maniac that stands on the street corner and shouts and screams, and who would deprive him of his right to speak, and who would deprive him of his right to political office, even if he manages to get elected to the Senate. I don't think it represents a threat to the system, and in a manner of speaking, it's a triumph of the system working. It's reasonable in a free society that somebody from the far left or the far right might get elected to office from time to time. That's fine with me. We have never had a serious problem with political extremists getting power in America. There's this huge liberal conservative middle that really acts as a dampener to keep that from happening. There is influence from the left and influence from the right, but they never acquire the kind of power they would need to take over. And this is why I think we, in a manner of speaking, need political extremists. We need them to raise these issues. We need them to oppose each other.
When we look at a Klansman on the street and we feel all that hate under the hood, it's easy to become so angry and so afraid that we want to shout him down and shut him up. We don't want his repugnant ideas to hurt anyone. Well, perhaps we should ask ourselves, what are we really afraid of? Ideas or ourselves?